This is Zettelcast, brought to you by readers, writers, thinkers, and teachers from Lillipub, along with our partners in thought, our Zettelcastans. In this show, we share discoveries that our Zettelcastans have shown us.
There you go.
And compare notes on how we're using this marvelous invention in our creative work. Thank you for joining us.
All right, Book.
Let's do it again.
All right.
Episode 26. Readings the Good Foot.
The activities for this week. I was thinking about reading. Kathleen has been doing this marvelous thing, second time around, about, how to read a book and really get into it. And I was thinking, okay, that's the what of it. And what about the underlying how of it? If you don't go into reading in a particular way, you'll get less than you might have gotten out of it. So ergo that first question. So anybody want to chime in?
What's the question again?
The first question. Thank you, Julianne. The first question, or the activity one, is true or false. Just as writing on a schedule for a designated period of time boosts productivity and output quality over time, the same can be said for reading. Question is that true or false? And then I'm asking if to explain the choice that you make. If it's true, why is it true? If it's false, why is it false? So who wants to give a stab at it? Wow.
I'll go. Okay.
I can go because mine's easy.
We're doing a series on it. Well, my statement, I think it's true. And I cannot say that right lately I have been reading on a schedule. I've been reading when I can. My early morning time is my very best time for reading and for writing, but I'm using that time for writing these days. But prior to that, I was reading for about 2 years in that 2.5 hours every morning. And it built up almost felt like a pressure within me to actually share what I was learning, what I was putting together, and the insights that I was getting, because I was also keeping a Zettelcast. And so when you keep a Zettelcast, ideas come together and they become very compelling. And you almost get the feeling that you really need to share them. And then what gave the spark that ignited that pressure came through the Scott Shepherd letter. In particular, his issue number 4 had a writing challenge in it. And so I took up the writing challenge, and I have not stopped writing since. I have literally written every day of my life since taking up that writing challenge, which means that my reading time gets moved hither and yon through the day whenever I can.
Yeah, but it still has a rhythm. So and since it has a rhythm, your insides, your mind recognizes that rhythm, and it gets ready for, she's writing that, or she's writing. So that means there'll be some reading along here somewhere. It expects it. That's my theory. I'm thinking. Anyway, great. Okay, who's next?
I can piggyback on that because for me, I wish I could read on a schedule, but for me, it's very dependent on what condition my brain is in. So I find that my best reading time is when I'm in that kind of inner quiet place to really do that activity and give it my full attention. And I can't schedule that. Some days cognitively I'm just kind of baked and I can't even look at another word. And then other days I can sit for a couple of hours and just really do some deep reading and, maybe make note cards or just absorb the material or whatever. So I have always wished that I could do that on a schedule, but and I don't know what to call that. I mean, sometimes there's just too many wild animals running around my head. And I think, oh, my reading time should be from, whatever, 7 to 8 in the morning or whatever. But if there's too much going on, I just can't sit down and focus. But I do find if I have an intention, there's a book that I'm currently reading on a kind of fiction theory that I'm including in my book. And I've been so wanted to get to it. I've so wanted to get to it. I accidentally ordered 2 copies of it. So I've been so excited to get into this book, but I knew I needed a chunk of time when I could really focus on it. And yesterday that happened. And I was able to just really sit with it and absorb it. And like Kathleen said, turn that into what I wanted to turn it into. But if there is a secret for getting into that flow so that you can do that reading, I would sure like somebody to share it, because I've never been able to do that. Even in college when I was trying to study, I was very much at the whim of what my brain could do in those moments, and I had to just work around it.
Wow. I would love for Tom Cobb to be if he was
Right.
here. I love that. To speak on that. Intuitively, I'm wondering, but you must have tried it, right? You tried it for like 60 days or something just to see what would happen.
Well, what I used to do, I mean, you think I'm a crazy plotter and scheduler now. I mean, I used to schedule, you can go back in the early work at my job. I literally charted what I did all day, every day in 15-minute increments. Like you can go back to 2015 and you can see every 15 minutes, every single thing that I worked on and did. Because the nature of my work was so fast moving, that was the only way that I could track everything and be able to follow an issue through to completion or whatever. So I used to think, well, I will just schedule, blocks of time for reading or blocks of time for, whatever. And the block of time would come and I would be either too mentally exhausted or too distracted, or my attention would be so focused on something else that in my mind took precedent. I would never get the reading done. So I did try. I could just never make that work. I wanted it to really bad. So much so that like for a year, I scheduled my lunch hour. Like, this is the time when I'm going to do the thing. And I could never, I shouldn't say never. Sometimes it would work. I would sit down and, quiet my mind and get in that space. But more often I find the rest of me just has to be at the ready. And when my brain is like, oh, this is a good reading time, I'm like, okay, drop everything. It's time to read. And I just have to do it. So I guess my process is backwards.
Wow. 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 Because
I don't like it, but it is how it is.
No, I mean, you gotta do you, and more importantly, you gotta know who you is, you gotta know who you are. So that you can
stop making plans for the person that you think you'll be. That was a tough lesson, particularly in regards to reading. I had to plan for the person that I am and be okay with that. And once I made that shift, everything got better because I stopped trying to force myself into the box.
Yeah.
Love that.
Yeah. Yeah.
Well, my answer is pretty similar to Victoria's in that after a certain amount of scheduling, I start to really hate scheduling and rebel against it. I've tried the idea of, okay, blocking out, a couple hours when you've got it on your calendar to do whatever. And boy, when that comes around, that's the last thing I want to do. And,
So true.
it doesn't work. And I get enough scheduling. I do need some structure, but I get most of that from having to work my job and deal with, errands and appointments, things that have to be scheduled. And that's enough scheduling for me. I don't want to do more. My brain doesn't like it. It just doesn't work. So I'm a lot more ad hoc, but I do have sort of tendencies. I do my best thinking usually in the evening, um, which is good for me. But one problem is I also have an evening job. Means I can really focus on my job, but it also means I can't do my reading or writing in the evening when it would be most natural, except on the weekends. Um, but right around 9 o'clock or so to midnight, that's when my mind is firing usually, and I can read and focus and write if I am available to do so. But otherwise, I read throughout the day, usually at meals, or when I get an opportunity. And I've got multiple books going at once, so I can choose which level is available. My brain is available to work on. So, if I'm feeling really, really with it, then I'll pick up something difficult. And if I'm not, I'll read Alice in Wonderland or something simple.
Mm, mm, mm.
I also have an allergic reaction to scheduling.
Okay.
So yeah, I don't like to schedule things that I really care about. And things that I really care about do get done, and some of them don't get done, But I don't think I scheduling, not that I gave it a good 60 days, but I did have that experience of, okay, here comes the timer. Don't want to do that. Don't want to do that now. And so my challenge is really not making time for reading, because I do have time for reading and I do reading. My challenge is more about selectivity, that I am, in the time that I have, am I making the best use of my time to read? And I feel that using the Zettelcast and also Adler's methods for how to read a book are really helping me with that. Both of those things are really helping. The first is, if I'm going to be reading a book, there has to be a good reason why I don't have a bib card for that book. And I haven't jumped ahead. Oh, I'm just going to start reading the book. Because if I don't have a clear intention for the book that I'm reading, I can go all sorts of directions with it, including too deep. If I'm just trying to understand, is this a book I really want to digest? Don't start digesting it yet. Which is, I think, both Scott Shepard's selectivity thing about don't take every note of everything that seems like, wow, that's interesting. But also don't go too deep yet before you've really determined this book is worth the effort. So that's what's helping me is just like, it's more like the habit stack. I'm reading now. Where's the bib card?
I'm reading now. Where's the bib card? I love that. Mhm.
This is my solution for when I'm reading on my tablet. I've got the little envelope for the bib cards that go with the books that are in there with my book washi tape.
Oh, I love it.
Wow. Okay. I did one of my research things on it because, as you can tell with my ditties and the rest of it, scheduled, what? It's like I have so much trouble. But all the theories, not all of them, but most of the theories talk about regularity as the key to productivity. And this business of making input as well as output something that your subconscious, your whole self can expect in terms of time, so you get into a rhythm and you go with it. Just like I was born at 4:30 in the afternoon. I am not a morning person. So
Can't fight it.
just being in the corporate world for over almost 20, 30 years, I mean, it's a 9 to 5 condition. And my 4:30 to midnight self had, much difficulty with that. Much difficulty with that. Still, when I went looking for some research to answer that question, I came up with this, and I will put this out there so you guys can look at it if you want. Okay. Why scheduled reading improves productivity and comprehension? We've had builds consistency and stamina. Does it really? I think it might. Theoretically, anyway, right? I'm getting no response. Okay.
Well,
I don't know.
I think
Yeah, stamina hasn't been a problem for me. It's like when to stop.
Yeah.
Consistency, though. I mean, that's one way to build consistency. Yeah.
Okay. Enhances retention and comprehension. That's point number 2. Enhance.
Zettelcast for that.
You say
Nope.
no?
You need a Zettelcast for that. Or at least be asking yourself some questions. You've got to be reading actively and following Adler's steps, even if you don't know what they are. But I mean, you have to be doing that kind of process where you're asking the book questions and letting the book answer them for you, and then judging the answers that you get back.
Right. Engagement. Engagement. Okay. Encourages deep work and avoids distractions. I'm saying avoid distractions. Not really. No. Not for me anyway. When I try it, distractions come from all kinds of directions, including inside my head. So increase. Go ahead.
My 2-hour prime block is 5 a.m. to 7 a.m. And so I'm actually at my desk with my coffee in hand by 5 in the morning, and usually 15 minutes ahead. And so that 2-hour block is just golden for me because you don't get any distractions. If I don't turn on my computer, if I don't lift the lid of my laptop, I'm totally undisturbed that whole time.
Oh, that's outstanding. That's outstanding. Oh, that's outstanding. Okay. Because I'm picturing myself in that same place, 5 o'clock in the morning, even consistently 5 o'clock in the morning, and my head is still going zip, 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 all over the place. But it's about intention. So I think that's it. Number 4 is increases overall reading volume. Maybe yes, maybe no, on that one. Develops a stronger critical thinking habit. No, that's
not by itself. Not by itself. Or even, I mean, yeah, it doesn't seem like it's either necessary or sufficient.
It reduces decision fatigue.
What am I going to do now? Yeah, okay.
Yeah, you've already decided that it's knowing when and how long to read eliminates the mental burden of deciding whether or not to pick up a book, is what they're saying, right? So the caveat is quality matters. No gains are made without a prerequisite focus. That's and the bottom line, setting a designated reading time, much like a structured writing routine, trains the brain for higher cognitive performance, increases information retention, and ultimately leads to a better engagement with complex ideas, making reading more productive and rewarding in the long run. I can see you thinking, Mel, come on.
Well, yeah, I think that there's sort of 2 things actually here that are sort of being conflated. There's the idea of scheduling a time, And then there's also the idea of setting the length of that time. Um, the scheduling thing doesn't really work for me, but I do use the setting the length of time with a timer. I do this more often with writing than with reading, but I have done it with reading as well, where, you know, say 20 minutes, I'm going to sit here and do nothing but this activity, reading or writing are the two typical. And that does help for me, because then my brain knows can't get out of it. Got to just do the thing for the next 20 minutes. And usually once I get started, then it goes pretty fast. And then when the timer goes off, then it's like, well, okay, I'll keep going, which is fine. So I do think that having a set amount of time that you're committing to whenever you do it can be very helpful. At least I have found it to be so.
Yeah, I like that. It's said, okay, I might not be able to deal with it at 9 o'clock, but if I can get there at 11:30 and do it for a definite 30 minutes every time, whenever I get there, I'm good. So that way you're not beating yourself up. You're saying, okay, we're a team, we're doing this,
Yeah.
This is good. This is wonderful. Okay, anybody else have anything to say about activity number 1?
Well, I just want to underscore what your comment when Kathleen described her routine, that it might not be scheduled, but there's a rhythm.
Yeah.
And I do think that rhythm is super important. Kathleen, you were talking about how you felt after 2 years of just ingesting a lot of material. Is like things need to come out. And I really try to I have a tendency to ingest more than I allow to come out. And so that's something that I really kind of monitor at the end of the day. Was it more input or output? Was it balanced? Just try to look at it that way without necessarily measuring, just feeling the effect of it. And I do think that rhythm is super important to just. And then the intention, right? There's so many things you could well, I don't think any of us has any problem with fighting reading. Like we like reading.
Yeah.
Some people don't. I don't get that, but I know there are some people that just hate to read. That we're not in that group. But because there's so many things one could read and so much depth one could explore, I think the intention really helps with what ends up looking like time boxing.
Mm.
Yeah.
Mm.
And Julianne, that suggestion that you made on the bib cards to make an actual tagline for your bib cards and index your tagline, that is so valuable and I'm finding it works exactly the way you described it, which is you're finishing up, or in my case, getting close to finishing up with a book. What am I going to tackle next? And you're being teased with what you ought to tackle next because you're bumping into it in your index.
Yeah.
Are you?
Yeah, I'm glad it's working that way for you. It is for me.
Yeah. Yeah.
Wow, talk about value. This is great.
Yeah.
This is
That's priceless.
I do have a quick question there for both of you, Julianne, Kathleen. When you talk about making taglines for your bib cards, are you doing that only for bib cards of books that you have read, or are you like making bib cards ahead of time and making taglines and indexing them?
It's more ahead of time for me.
Mhm.
It's why do I want to read this?
Gotcha.
I haven't gone through this entire thing with that, but and I would say every week there are probably a half a dozen books that somebody recommends to me that come across like, oh, I'd like to read that too. And now I at least make the bib card for it and index that so that I will know, well, why do I want to read that? Because lots of things sound good.
Oh yeah.
Yeah. And I'm hoping that it will also help me with depth of reading, which you brought up earlier, Julianne, but I've been thinking about too, that when I put down that purpose, that purpose should tell me how deeply I want to read it.
I repeat, value, value, value. Okay. Okay. Activity number 2, which is, what did I just do with my paper? True or false? Reading fiction strengthens empathy. If so, how? Why? Does reading on a schedule help, hinder, or have no impact in this regard? Okay, so who wants to tackle that first?
I'll jump in again. Okay, I'll answer the last part first about reading on a schedule. I never read fiction on a schedule, so I can't answer that one. But I definitely think that reading fiction helps with empathy. And I don't, and for me, it's hard for me to imagine myself not putting myself in the role, at least of the protagonist. And since childhood, I've tended to also put myself in the role of the antagonist or even the villain, and to try to understand what's making the villain be bad. Because when I was a little girl, my brother was crazy about sci-fi movies and things like Rodan and Godzilla and all these horrible monsters that would scare, the living daylights out of me. And so my dad would say, well, before you go to bed at night, think about the story and make the villain become a good guy. It's your story in your head. Turn him around and make him a good guy, because I would get nightmares. So, but I found if I made the villain into a good guy before I went to bed, then I wouldn't get nightmares. So I continue to read that way. And so sometimes it takes me months to rewrite a book in my head. I've had the misfortune of actually reading a Stephen King novel once, and that took months. I had to rewrite the whole book mentally.
That's awesome.
So yes, I think it definitely improves empathy. And now that I've made kind of a formal study of the character traits, it has had a little bit of difficulty there because I have the intellectual piece coming in, trying to judge trying to picture the character profile of the character. And I have to make that a separate exercise. Otherwise, it gets in the way of just feeling with the character. Like, it's okay, I read it, I enjoyed it. Okay, now I'm done enjoying it. Okay, now I can do the intellectual piece. But I can't do them at the same time or it spoils the story for me.
Oh, okay. So, wow, Kathleen, your answers are always always have such a depth that that I'm one of the questions I have for you is when you rewrite these stories in your head, do you write comments or you write those rewrites somewhere?
I don't ever put them down like in writing, but I'll replay a scene over and over and over again until I get everybody being very nice.
Over and over and over and over.
Which is
As long as it's often as
another reason I want to live in Kathleen's head.
as often as it takes
so we're
till
clear.
it's believable, till the real characters that are really acting out of genuine motivation and are being nice.
Okay. Yes. The mind of KS. Okay. Wow.
Ever
Okay.
the toddler.
I'm sorry.
Ever the toddler.
Ever the toddler. Oh. Yeah. Well, what is it? What is it? The beginner's mind is the best. So I don't know. Hats off to you. That's what I say.
And to Dad.
Yeah. Anybody else want to follow that? Hey, come on, guys.
I don't have a dog in this fight. I guess I've never really thought about it, which is kind of a weird answer, but I think I think I would agree with the first part of what Kathleen said, which is particularly if a main character is well written, you do see yourself or parts of yourself in them, which is why you follow the story. But beyond that, I don't know that it affects me beyond that, really. I mean, I don't know that I could think of a lot of books that furthered or changed my perception in that way. I don't think I read like that.
Is there a ratio that you've noticed in your own reading of fiction to nonfiction?
Well, I have tended towards nonfiction for a long time. I got away from reading fiction there for probably, I don't know, a decade or so. You know, I was teaching the text that I was teaching, and that was really all I was working with. And I think I just felt like a lot of fiction that was coming out from, say, the mid 2000s, for like that 10-year or so period, I just was not loving it. I mean, in 1996 and 97, I read Infinite Jest by David Foster Wallace, which is one of my favorite books. But I mean, that's 1,070 pages. It took some reading to get through that doorstop. So, you know, and that was a very empathetic book. I mean, you're essentially dealing with all different kinds of addiction and how people deal with it, but there's a whole lot of other story packed around it. So I did.
What was the name of that book, please?
Infinite Jest.
Put it in the chat for me, please. Infinite. Oh, JEST. Okay, Infinite Jest. I see David who? Wallace, Foster Wallace. Okay. Thank you.
It's Infinite Jest is the name of a film that is so addictively interesting that when you begin watching it, you can't stop and you die watching it. Oh. Now, that's not a huge chunk of the story. It plays a part in the story, but it's fundamentally, it's about all different kinds of addiction. And it's a comment on pop culture and literature and people in general, blah, blah, blah. So I chewed on that book for 5 years because there's a lot in there. There's a lot to it. And he gives an interview where he talks about how he wrote it as a fractal. So the structure of the book is a fractal. It's not a through line. So that, I guess that's more the kind of reader that I am, where in regards to fiction. I'm not a book of the week club. Next fiction book. That's not me. I want to pick up something that's going to knock the crap out of me and spend years understanding it and dealing with it. And the other one, prior to that, was Thomas Pynchon's Gravity's Rainbow. If you can see that. Will that focus?
Yes. Focused enough. Yeah. Gravity's Rainbow, Thomas Pynchon. Yes.
Yeah, it's written the same way. It's non-linear. It's written largely about the Cold War and the weaponization of modern warfare, though it's more a comment on society. But I probably spent 4 or 5 years on that one. So, and then I go and I read all the criticism. I read all of the commentary. I read the books that were written from it. So before that, it was T.S. Eliot's The Wasteland. Because I think, if I remember it, I think he referenced 140 other works in the footnotes of that poem. I went and read all 140 and wrote a paper about each one. That was my senior thesis in college. So I don't read fast food fiction. I pick something that I can really chew on, and I spend years with it, and I don't read anything else. I'm just weird like that.
I think it's a marvelous way to be.
Well, I've always wanted I've always wanted to, to be the book of the month club gal.
Wow.
But what I found
Sorry.
is, I'm the same way with movies. I would rather rewatch a movie that I love that is deeply satisfying every week for 5 years than watch something new and be disappointed and feel like I wasted my time, which is why I don't watch movies. I'm still watching movies from the 80s because I know what's going to happen. So that's how I am with books. I'm very stingy with my reading time because too often I get into something and it's like, are you kidding me? There's seriously, this is in there. And I'm like, now I got to, it's like Kathleen with having to rewrite things. Now I got to deal with thinking about that. And then I just feel like the author slimed me and I don't like any of that. So that's just the kind of reader. I mean, I'm still chewing on the Starless Sea, and that's been 3 years. I'm almost ready to dive into bringing that one up over in Lily Pub, by the way, because I know we want to talk about that book. But I go really deep into the books that I read and spend a lot of time with them. So I can't comment on like what Julianne does. I would love to be able to do that and just have all of these different rich experiences and just, read from that buffet, but that's just not my nature. I have to live vicariously through her.
Yeah, I'm just wondering, out of all the millions of books, I mean, talk about an anchor book. These are anchors that you're using, and you can, and then you delve into each part, each ingredient, and you come away and you really digest what's happening. You really come away. I mean, you become the book, so to speak, over time, right?
Yes.
Yeah.
That's a good way to put it. Because if I find that I like a book world, now a short book that I did that with was The Secret History by Donna Tartt, which took her 10 years to write. She's my kind of writer. So when
throw
you
these
find a
names
book
out
like
really
that-
quickly, I didn't get that. Do it.
Sorry.
Again.
Donna Tartt.
Donna, Donna.
Tartt.
Donna
Uh-huh.
Tartt.
Tartt. Tartt.
Okay, and what's the name of it?
The Secret History.
The Secret History. Okay. Thank
It's
you.
about a group of Latin studies college students who accidentally kill one of their friends. And I can't say any more because it'll spoil it. But what I find is, much like with a movie, if I find a world that I like, I tend to stay in it. I won't leave and go to a different world. So that's why I will spend years, reading the interviews with the author, reading the criticism, following how it lands in the canon of fiction. I'm much more interested in that, which keeps me in that world, than moving on to something else.
Right.
Which brings up the Roanoke world that we're creating. I'm enjoying living in that world.
I know, right? I just wish I had more time to spend there. I'll get there.
Yeah, you'll get there.
Yeah. Wow.
Well, I'll go through periods, years and years, where I haven't read any fiction, and then I'll go for a year, and that's all I read. But in terms of empathy, there are certain books that I've read. I don't know that I would say reading fiction it increases empathy, but I would say that there are certain fiction books that I really appreciate for that effect. And so I think Orson Scott Card is really beautiful at this.
I like him.
The motivation for everything that's difficult is it comes out in the story, and a lot of times it's kind of tragic misunderstanding or tragic in the case of like Speaker for the Dead, completely different evolutionary history. and understanding of biology.
Mm.
And I think he explores that stuff deeply. And A Speaker for the Dead is just, I think, of a quite perfect example of this. It's what it is about. um, and his books, they don't always land, but I always feel like he gives me a lot to work on, and he chooses subject matter. In that same series, there's a sequel to that where he really goes deep into something that looks a lot like OCD.
Mm.
And you're there with her. It's something. So yeah, I think it can certainly be done, especially if an author cares to take you on that journey.
Mhm.
Right. I love Ender's World.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. Wow. Okay. So yours is almost feast or famine kind of thing between fiction and nonfiction, right? Yeah.
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 Okay. Wow. Okay. But the balance, but the pendulum swings.
The pendulum swings, but I would say it's mostly nonfiction, has been what I've been reading for the bulk of my adult life, mostly nonfiction.
Right.
And it's more, just feeling like there are these skills I need.
Yep. So it's work oriented.
Not necessarily job work oriented so much as all the things that I think that in my silly little subconscious that I think I need to nail down before I do X. So I'm like that on Roanoke, right? There are certain things that I feel like I need to know more about this before I can write about it.
Yes. Yes.
That is a point of view that is worthy of dispute.
Yeah.
Because a lot of times you figure out, you could kind of gloss over that, or you could just leave that as a to fill out later. Get the words on the page, and there's a lot more to happen with that. So it's something, again, balancing that input versus output thing. Because I'll get down into perfectionism like that.
Yeah.
Wow.
That is so true. That is so true. So much of what I have read, it's just stuff I want to know about, alternate theories of whatever, or, this academic's view on, archaeology, or just whatever. It's like, I need to know this. And I go and read, and I will almost always choose learning something wacky from nonfiction over subjecting myself to somebody else's fictional world that may or may not pan out. And Julianne's right. So often those things, I choose them because they feed my inner world, which is where my writing comes from.
Wow. So Mel?
Well, I think fiction can help with empathy, but I've always been empathetic myself, and so it's not something that I've needed help with. And my interest is more similar to Victoria's, I think, in that I I like ideas, and that's why I read a lot more nonfiction than fiction. It's probably 85 to 90% nonfiction. Um, but when I am reading fiction, it's the ideas that are being expressed through the fiction that really get me going. Um, so um, yeah, and as far as working on reading on a schedule, well, I don't do that. So, uh, but yeah, I love the books that are fractal-like and nonlinear. I've read House of Leaves a couple of times by Mark Danielewski, which may not be anybody's cup of tea here because it is nominally horror and it's about a very terrifying house. But it's also like deals with literary criticism and the nature of reality. So, it's right up my alley and I love it. And the same thing with the Illuminatus trilogy, which again, probably nobody here would like it because it's gets a little bit raunchy. But you know, it's completely nonlinear, jumps from one perspective to another, and you find out in the third book finally why it's doing that. But you know, it just there's so much that it's dealing with, and it's this amazing snapshot of sort of the 70s countercultural movement and the politics and just the social scene, and I love it. It's wonderful.
What was the
So
name of that?
it's the Illuminatus trilogy by
Robert Anton Wilson.
thank you, Robert Anton Wilson and Robert Shea, I believe is the second author. But like I said, it's got some explicit pieces to it, and it's nonlinear, so it's hard to read. So, you know, take that as a fair warning.
Wow.
I need to reread that one because I read it like you're reading something light. And it's
Yeah.
fun to read that way, but you don't come away having grasped it all.
I want to Zettelcast in that book because the problem with the nonlinearness is when you go, oh man, I really wanted to revisit this one part. Where in the 3 books is it? No idea. And there's like, you know, when you're jumping perspectives with no marker, you know, multiple times per chapter, finding one particular thing is rough. And it's not in, you know, it doesn't go in time order. And so, yeah, I need to like index this entire book just to be able to find the stuff again. But I've read it. I've read the whole series.
Index it and share it, and then we can skip over the parts we don't want to read. Because I love a conspiracy theory. I'm all in.
Yeah. I've read it probably half a dozen times, the full trilogy. It's been a huge impact. It's made a huge impact on my life.
That's fascinating. I don't know what this says about me, but I have never run into anything that I have read more than once. You know? And I have the same thing with movies and things. I know people who talk about movies that they've seen 10, 20 times. They can even do the dialogue. You know.
Oh yeah, that's
me. Yeah.
Right. And I'm saying, but I know what's gonna happen. So what, you know, what? So I don't chew on it. But I'm as I'm listening to all of you, I'm thinking, maybe you were doing your impatience or whatever it was. Made you miss some stuff. You know, you missed some good stuff. So this is something that I'm definitely going to have to look at. Again, value. Thank you guys. This is wonderful. Victoria.
Something you said is absolutely right. When it comes to fiction, and sometimes even poetry, like I'm rereading Milton's Paradise Lost, which is a book I spent a lot of years with, because I'm going to teach Zettelcasting a poem as part of my readers modules. So we're going to do Paradise Lost in the Wasteland. But I am a very impatient fiction and poetry reader, and I will literally just skip and skim my way through to get to the end. But with nonfiction, I will always read it all. It's just a quirky thing. I don't place the same gravity on my fiction. If I'm just reading through, I find like, I could have written that better, or I'm not crazy about that. Flip pages, keep going. So whatever that means.
Interesting.
There's a thought that it sounds like there's more inherent trust, the trust factor with nonfiction versus fiction. You don't know exactly, you know, whether or not you're getting quality stuff, but there's an assumption that you're getting quality stuff from nonfiction, but from fiction, it could be, you don't know if it was really researched as well as it ought to have been, kind of thing,
Yeah.
so
I would speak to that a bit in terms of nonfiction, because I used to be like you, Victoria. I would always read every nonfiction book deeply from the front to the back, preface and all. And now with Adler, I have come to be much more selective in my reading. And I'm finding that not because I don't trust the author, but because authors have different amounts to say and they spend different numbers of words saying it. And some books are very replete with filler. And you can, skimming, you can get everything the author has to say, you can get out of it much more quickly. And that's what I really learned with Adler, is discovering how many books, by the time I've finished pre-reading it, do you want to read the book? Oh, I did. I was happy I read the book. Do I want to read it deeply? No, I'm done with it. And I'm getting through books much more quickly than I ever got through them before. And even the deep reading process with this one that I'm doing now, that, Hold On, You Lost Me. What I'm finding with this one, having done all of the pre-reading and having answered Adler's questions, which are very pointed, I'm finding that when it came time to actually read the book to get all of the how-to statements out, it went incredibly fast. I've never gotten through a nonfiction book that quickly because I didn't have to stop this. I'd already identified all the meat in the book. So I'm shocked at how much it has sped up my reading time of nonfiction. But for me, fiction, if I don't read the whole thing, what's the point?
It's that selection process that is the key, to me. Which and then there is the idea of the purpose. Why am I reading X, Y, or Z book? And when I'm reading X, Y, or Z book, it may be that X has 2 or 3 ideas that are germane to my purpose.
Mm-hmm.
And the other book maybe only has 1. So if I'm reading with that purpose in mind of answering this question that I have in my head, then the idea of selectivity and depth become easier to navigate, Yeah.
And I'll even make another bib card if I'm reading the same book for a different purpose. I'll start over with a new bib card.
Yeah, that's a good point.
Makes much sense. Much sense. Right. Wow. Okay.
I definitely, I'm a movie rewatcher. They're my favorite movies I've seen a bunch of times, and I can quote you a lot of that stuff. And it's just, it ends up being, I can quote you every line from Bull Durham. Love that movie. And so it just becomes kind of part of the way I converse. Because it lines from a movie become a metaphor, so lots of times from Bull Durham, I'll note, oh, that was beautiful, what'd I do? To me, that's a tagline that says so much.
Oh my God, yes it does. Yes it does.
So yeah, I do have that experience with reading, although I haven't been as deep a fiction reader as some of the rest of you. But there have definitely been books where I get to the end and it's like I'm not done, and I go right to the page 1 again. The last time I did that was with the 7th book of the Harry Potter series. I was very satisfied with that book, and I wanted to just taste it again. And it wasn't because I wanted to, I knew what happened, and I was satisfied with the plot. And then I just wanted to savor the moments. And that's why that when I'm watching a movie again, it's more about the moments. How was that moment just so beautifully done?
So true.
Okay, Julianne. There's a part of my handy dandy research that talks about, well, it's the idea, first of all, of how do you entice nonfiction readers to read fiction as a knowledge tool.
Oh.
As a knowledge tool, okay? Particularly when we're talking about emotions. You know, because we tend to be, you know, a left brain society, and there's not as much information or not as much care and feeding of the emotional side as should be. So the question is, okay, so you have all these different genres of fiction, literary fiction, science fiction, first person and versus third person narrative, character driven and versus plot driven stories, unreliable narrators, and perspective shifting. The idea is in this section, there are suggestions as to what kind of fiction you can suggest to nonfiction readers. And it's all based on what kind of nonfiction reading they do.
Yeah.
You know, so you plug in, you kind of meet them where they're at, so to speak, and gently suggest the benefits of reading fiction. You know, it's interesting. Wow, we're at the top of the hour, guys. This has been wonderful. And I also found something in my library, in my files, 6 steps for developing empathy in social situations. That's the name of the file.
Oh.
And I put this in my library in 2018. I was so surprised because I put, you know, this is Dropbox. And so I just put the word empathy in my search in Dropbox, and it popped up. And this thing is 13 pages of gold.
Huh?
I will also include, and it also has a map.
Ah,
Oh.
visual thinking.
Right,
Wow.
right.
Email in that.
You know, this is Adam Szynski is the author of this article and the maps, and it was part of the subscription. So I'm hoping that it's okay for me to share it with you guys. I'm going to put it in there, put it out there, and because I think it's really quite valuable, Okay, so I don't think we do we have time to go for number 3? Number 3 was, what is your most reliable way to avoid distraction while reading? How long has your method been working for you? And what was reading like before you discovered your go-to focus method?
I'll start. Well, the most important thing for me is to get rid of audible distractions. So no TV, no radio, no music. Even like instrumental music can be too much sometimes. Sometimes it's okay. Because any sort of audible stuff like that is completely distracting from the words on the page. But when I can't get rid of everything, like there's background noise that I can't get rid of, I have a particular white noise type of recording that I listen to, which I absolutely love. It's great for focus. And it's from the 1970s, and it is called The Psychologically Ultimate Seashore. And
Yes.
you can, okay, I have the actual album. This is how I discovered it. Um, it is,
Oh,
it's from a series of recordings in the 70s called Environments, which were long form natural recordings, or sometimes they're in like cafes or things like that. Um, you can listen to them on YouTube if you to get a feel for them. You can also buy them all packaged together in a very inexpensive app that's $3, I think, four maybe at the most, where you can listen to the remastered digital versions of all of the entire series. You can put it on repeat. There's no ads. It's perfect. They're all great for different reasons, but that first one, Psychologically Ultimate Seashore, which is such a 70s name title, it's just is so good for focus for me. I mean, if I need to focus for it's 30 minutes long, put that on and I am good to go.
Oh,
That's awesome.
wow.
You shared that a long time ago and completely seduced me. It's literally pinned on my YouTube on my toolbar, so I can go right to it. My second one, in addition to anything environmental, rain, seashore, that kind of stuff, is library sounds. Library sounds have been my superpower for years. There's a recording of a gal. It's when she was studying to be a dentist, and she did a study with me at the New York Public Library that's about an hour and 15 minutes long. It's embarrassing how many times I've listened to that. I would have to say it's probably in the thousands by now.
wow.
I know every chair squeak. I know every book cart noise. At like 21 minutes, there's a joke. There's a horse clomping through the library because it's a woman in high heels walking by. I know every sound and I love it. It's awesome. The library is my happy place.
I love it.
Wow, and you said that's available too, Victoria?
Yeah, I can put the link in the chat. It's called, there's two people that I follow that do something called Study With Me. They just go to wherever their place is and they set up a camera in real time and they do their study. So this gal, this is from probably 6 years ago when she was studying to be a dentist. I love her channel. And there's another one called Merv. She's an international law student in Scotland. So often her study with me's are like at the Glasgow Library, or she's got a really beautiful view out of her apartment. And so sometimes it'll just be looking at the bay out the window of her apartment, and she will just sit there. And I like hers because sometimes they're 8 or 10 hours long.
Wow.
And she'll just set up the camera and be like, I'm going to study these 5 subjects today, 2 hours each with a 20-minute break in between. She hits go and you just sit there and work together. So I'll put those links in the chat. I find them so helpful because it immediately puts you in that zone with somebody else. And that's very useful for me.
Very good.
Even if I'm reading and they're writing or whatever, it doesn't matter. Just having that other presence there, which is why I like the sprints that we do on Saturdays over in Lily Pub. Just having other people working around me helps because I spend so much time alone.
Wow.
I chat up.
Okay.
Mine is biological. I got a CO2 meter because I found that I was getting drowsy when I tried to read. And I would think, oh, darn, I'm getting old. I can't keep my attention anymore. What's the matter with me? Well, when I got a CO2 meter, I found that it was going up into the orange. The little lights went from green to orange because I wasn't getting enough air circulation in my room. So I keep that on. As soon as that turns orange, even though my husband has allergies and we normally don't have the windows open, I'll open my window, keep the office door shut, and bring in some oxygen. So it was my biggest distraction was not enough oxygen left in the room.
Wow.
Wow.
That might be one of my very problems, especially when I do much of my work in the basement, that might be just exactly okay.
Yeah.
All right, so
Right?
let
That's
me,
good.
it's excellent. It's excellent. Because that's what I was thinking. I said, oh my God, I'm going toward 80. What is the matter with me? You know, what could, you know, come on, brain, you don't fail me now, you know, kind of thing. You know?
Open the window and open the window, and suddenly I can read again. I'm not falling asleep anymore.
Right. I was thinking maybe I should, but I didn't want to do that. When I was younger and working, I was, you know, at the coffee counter, you know, all the time, you know, coffee, 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 coffee. And because I was born at 4:30 in the afternoon, I decided that my best time was to work overnight. So
Oh.
I started first I started the afternoon shift, 4:30 to 4 to 12. And then I said, no. This is gonna kill my social life. It's already small. So I can't do that. So let me switch over to midnight to 8, which is what I did. Uh problem with that was my best time.
Yeah.
So my best time, there I was at the office doing X, Y, and Z things, doing somebody else's bidding, so to speak, as opposed to following my head, you know? But anyway, that's great, Kathleen. I'm gonna see if my environment is physically situated to help me as opposed to hinder me, you know? So that's wonderful. Wow. Okay.
So just a quick one for me. I have the ability to tune things out. And I think I inherited that from my mom. I have this memory of my mom reading there. The TV was on. Somebody was asking her a question. She was absolutely not hearing it. And my sister said, "Mom, fire, 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 Mom." And that is how I can be. And my husband and I, before we moved to this house, we lived in a New York City studio for 10 years.
Hmm.
And you got to be able to tune things out.
Yeah.
So I don't, it's not a problem for the reading part. It's probably a problem for the, being in a room with people and not actually with them, but
Yeah.
trade-offs. You can poke me.
Sounds like a superpower to me, you know? Definitely a superpower because, I mean, you can put yourself in a little cocoon at will. At will. I think that's just outstanding. Whatever you can do at will that's positive for you
Yeah.
it's a great thing. It's a great thing. I know one of the reasons that I put this activity on here is because my monkey mind is all over the place. Right? And on the one hand, it's all over the place. And on the other hand, my muse is sitting there looking at me saying, huh? What? What do you want me to do? Talk to me. What so how do I engage her? You know, is it through schedules? Is it through, time blocking? Is it through literally prayer? Do I, meditate? What do I do to get this thing going in a regular way? So wow. Okay, that was why I asked, because I don't have one. I don't have a go-to.
Try. Yeah.
I'm sorry?
Now you've got some stuff to try.
Absolutely.
Open a window.
Absolutely. Open the window, go for a walk, and write every day. Those are 3 things that across all of these things that we've been talking about. And know your purpose for whatever it is that you're doing. Those 4 things. Golden. Okay, does anybody else have anything they'd like to add? to anything?
I think we covered it. Great assignments. I really appreciate you leading us, Deb.
Yes. I'll be leading next time.
Okay. I'll do the one after that.
Ooh.
Okay, we got the schedule here. And apologies to you, all of you for giving each other a short time to consider the question. But believe me, I was going back and forth since last Monday. What am I gonna do? What you know? And the monkey mind was just saying, da 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 da, you know. So
It's all good.
okay, yeah, I have to congratulate myself, okay, for being in this group,
Yeah.
you know, because I mean, Scott got me here, or actually, it was Aaron's who got me into Zettelcasting, but then Scott exploded that, and then Kathleen, you exploded it even more. So you know,
Nice.
this is really outstanding, and I appreciate you one and all. Thank you so much. Okay.
Well,
So
Kathleen, where could people meet more of us?
You can find us on LilyPub. Join us on lilypub.org. We have a Roanoke project area where you can join in the Roanoke story. And we have a circle for Zettelcasting where you can ask your questions and participate. So please join us, lilypub.org. You'll be glad you did.
Yeah.
We're a friendly bunch.
yeah. Okay. Bye, everybody.
Bye, everybody.
I-